Hi guys, I'm Charlotte and today I'll be doing an original tag that I have created called the Direwolves and Dragons book tag. So at this point I think it is very clear that I love Game of Thrones, that A Song of Ice and Fire is my favourite book series of all time and that I am just trash for the series. So because of that I have decided to create a tag, and I will just say before we get into this there will be spoilers, so if you are not familiar with the series or you don't want spoilers then perhaps this is not the tag for you. I was kind of thinking how I have done recommendations on the houses of Westeros and maybe I could do some for the Direwolves, and I thought why not just make a tag, because why not? I've never done one before, so I hope it is okay. I am really happy with how it turned out, but I just hope that you guys enjoy it as well, so let's just get into it. So as the name suggests, the prompts are going to be based off the Direwolves and the Dragons from A Song of Ice and Fire or Game of Thrones. So I will just be giving a little bit of background on each creature and why I've picked the prompt I have, but let's just get into it. First we have Grey Wind, who is Robb's direwolf. And for this I have chosen a book with a strong leader or a strong first book in a series. And I've done this because Robb is the eldest of the Stark kids, but when Robb becomes king in the north he rides at the head of his army and Grey Wind is by his side, and the pair of them are just, they're leaders, you know? So for this I have gone with The Immortal Rules by Julie Kagawa, and this fits both sides of the prompt because I think Ali is a very strong leader of her little group of friends who aren't really her friends, and then once she disbands from them and starts to lead the second group that she is with, again she kind of becomes a leader even though she's not in charge, but people start looking up to her, and I think that that is indicative of being a strong leader. And I also think this book is a very good setup to the trilogy as a whole, and all of the books are some of my favourites, and if it weren't for the first book I don't think I would have loved all of them, because if the first book is bad you're not going to want to read the rest of them. But this is set in a post-apocalyptic kind of dystopian world where vampires are around, I guess, and they are truly the monsters that you tell kids about and be like, ooh, the vampire will bite you and everything. They are not nice. They are not like the whole Twilight, oh I'm a vampire and I sparkle. It's I'm a vampire and I'm gonna rip your throat out kind of thing, and it's honestly one of the best vampire series I've ever read, and I was into vampires when I was younger, so I know what I'm talking about. Then we have Lady, who is Sansa's direwolf, and Sansa and Lady are both very reserved and noble, and Sansa is very obsessed with being a proper lady, hence why she called her direwolf Lady. So for this we need a book with a noble character or a noble setting, and for this I have gone with His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman, specifically the first book, The Northern Light, because there is just so much about this that screams nobility to me. Firstly, the setting of Oxford and around the colleges there, that to me is just so, having seen them in person, it is honestly, it's incredible, and I'm kind of speechless about it because they're just so beautiful, and while they're not a palace and it's not for royalty, they are incredibly noble and just beautiful, and you can really imagine someone in their fancy clothes walking around there. And yeah, so for the setting, but then also because Lord Asriel, who is essentially Lyra's father, he is pretty noble. You know, one, he's a lord, but two, the way he holds himself is very regal and very in control of himself, and his demon, the snow leopard, she is very noble. So all around that is just very noble. But then you have Mrs. Coulter, who, while she's not the good guy, she again is just screams nobility and royalty and just regalness to me because she's so put together. And then you even have the bears like Yorick Bernison, who are noble in their own ways. Like, they're noble because they're these magnificent creatures, and then they have their own kind of hierarchy and kingdom, and this series is so beautiful and magical and does take a bit of an odd religious twist, but the first book in particular is just noble. Next is Nymeria, who is Arya's direwolf, and those two are the kind of boisterous, adventurous, I don't want to be a lady, I just want to fight and run around and climb trees kind of thing. The kind of tomboys, I guess. So for Nymeria I have said you need to find a book with an adventure or an adventurous character, and I have gone with the entire Percy Jackson series and all the spin-offs for that, but we're going to go with the first one just for video's sake. Yeah, I think we all know what Percy Jackson is about, but there are so many adventures and quests and tasks that they have to do. The gods are just like, right, I need you to do this, off you go, and send in what, 10-year-old kids to do their dirty work, which great, that's not like, these are your kids and you're sending them out to their death essentially, but that aside, they're all very adventurous, they're all up for it. Yeah, they moan about it because who wouldn't, but they go on these adventures, they're fighting things, they are just... If there's a book that sums up adventurous, it is this one. So then we have Summer, who is Bran's direwolf, and Bran is like Arya. He wants to be a knight, he kind of has that thrill for adventure, he likes to climb the castle walls, but Summer is probably one of the most loyal direwolves. I'd say they all are to their own individual owner, I guess, but Summer and Bran seem to have a really good connection, and that becomes more apparent as you go through the series, the books. So for this we need to find a book with a loyal character or your favourite sidekick, and I have gone for Echo from the Lunar Chronicle, because to me she has that kind of bond with Cinder, you know. Yeah, okay, she's a machine, but they're friends, they get on. She is very protective of Cinder and wants to help her and everything. But this series is a kind of dystopian sci-fi take on fairy tales, and Cinder in particular looks at Cinderella, where the main character, Cinder, is a cyborg and she's not treated well, like Cinderella. But then she meets the Prince of New Beijing and kind of gets sent out on a whirlwind of adventures. There's a plot going on with the evil aliens and then the lost princess from the evil alien world, and that was a terrible way to describe this book, I'm sorry, but it is kind of Cinderella in space, I guess. So if you're into that kind of thing, you like sci-fi, I would highly recommend this, although at this point I think everyone, like with Percy Jackson, knows what the Lunar Chronicles is about, and like rightly so in my opinion, because I adore this series. Next is Shaggydog, who is Rickon's direwolf, and I feel like Shaggydog and Rickon are some of the ones that we don't know as well, because we don't get any kind of POV from Rickon because he is so young and he's not really included. He's a bit of an afterthought, I guess, but we're still including him because we have to. But Shaggydog is the most violent of the direwolves. However, he's also really sweet and protective towards Rickon because, you know, Rickon's his. They go together, they're a pair. So for this I have said you need to find a morally grey character, and I have gone with Blaze from Blaze by Stephen King. Because in this, Blaze kidnaps a baby, which is not good. However, he is still really sweet to this little baby and he thinks he's doing what is best. His partner George tells him that we need to do this, and he is being loyal to George and thinking, oh, this is what he wants me to do, I've done a good job, I've done it, and nothing happened. And so in that sense he is morally grey. I do think Blaze has a heart of gold, so you can argue that he's not, he is a good guy, but then he's a kidnapper, so he's not, and that's where the lines start to blur and the greyness starts to seep in. But this is just an incredible, incredible book. It's not your typical Stephen King. He wrote it under his pen name, so it's not your scary or gory horror, but it's just such a good story. Blaze is so sweet, even though he is a bad guy, and it's very reminiscent of Mice and Men with George and Lenny. You know, one of the main characters is called George, but then Blaze is just, he is Lenny essentially, and I really like the parallels between that. And if you are a fan of Mice and Men but you also want to start getting into Stephen King maybe, I would recommend this one. But it is more of a thriller than anything else, so don't go into it if you're looking for your typical scariness from Stephen King, because you're not going to find it, but you are going to find a really good read. And then finally for the direwolves we have Ghost, who is Jon Snow's direwolf. Jon is not one of the Starks, he is Ned Stark's bastard, and so he doesn't really fit in, but neither does Ghost, because Ghost is the runt of the litter, he's an albino, and he was not originally found. When they came across the direwolf pups, they didn't see Ghost. Ghost was a bit of a surprise. So for this you need to find a book that surprises you, and I have gone for The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, because even though this is one of my all-time favourite books, I didn't think I was going to like it. When I first heard The Hunger Games, I initially thought, oh, that's about eating disorders, okay, whatever. And then when I realised it wasn't, I learnt that it was sci-fi. I didn't want to read it at all. I was like, oh, I don't like sci-fi, don't want to read that, never will. And then I saw the trailer for the first film and was like, hang on a minute, that looks like it could be good. So I picked the book up and I was not disappointed. Everyone knows what The Hunger Games is about at this point. Katniss volunteers to save her sister in this brutal game where children have to fight to the death. It surprised me. Like I said, I didn't think I would enjoy it, but I did, and that just goes to show that you can't judge books before you read them, because even if the cover is not good or the synopsis sounds a bit dull, you could be really pleasantly surprised and they could end up being your favourite book. And now we move into the dragon part of the tag, and obviously the direwolves are the Starks, but the dragons are for Daenerys because she is the mother of dragons. And her first dragon, Drogon, is the most fearsome. He is the most kind of independent. He does listen to her, but at the same time he's going to go out and kill whatever he wants and eat it because that's what dragons do, and he is the first one in there when she says Dracarys. He's the one that breathes the fire, so he is kind of aggressive. And Drogon was named for Daenerys' husband, Khal Drogo, who is this great warlord. He goes into battle, he's fearless and everything, so kind of fits with the whole aggressive thing. So for Drogon you need to find a book with an aggressive character or a book that has a battle, and I've gone for Cujo because the titular character Cujo is incredibly aggressive. Yes, Cujo is a dog, but that's fine because he's still a character, and like I'm basing this off dragons, and like dragons aren't people, so it's fine. But Cujo is incredibly aggressive because he gets bitten by a rabid bat, and you know, rabies, not good. But after he's bitten, two of the main characters, Donna and her son Tad, get attacked by him. And that is basically the story. It is about a rabid dog that attacks people. I don't really know how else to explain it. It's just Cujo gets bitten, becomes rabid, attacks people. There we go. But this is one of the goriest Stephen King books I have ever read. But it is also one of the most disturbing, and I don't know if that's just because I'm not a dog person, and at the time of reading this I was going through a change in medication. I wasn't feeling great, and then I read this and it was not a good idea, let me tell you, but I really enjoyed this. If you are kind of sensitive to animal cruelty, then maybe don't read this, because obviously Donna has to fight Cujo because she has to save her and her son's lives. But if you like a gory story, then this is the one. It is so action-packed from almost start to finish, and Stephen King is also kind of clever in that he almost goes into Cujo's mind, which I really like, because when animals are in stories you don't always get to see things from their perspective, I guess, which you could argue that animals don't have a perspective, but in something like this clearly Cujo does, because he doesn't feel well. He's been bitten by a bat. He can't understand why he feels like this. So yes, overall a really interesting, really gripping, gory read. And then we have Rhaegal, who is named for both her dead brother and her unborn child. Rhaegal is not a lucky dragon. He is named after someone who's dead. He is also named for her child, who ultimately ends up dead, and he gets locked away, and that's not lucky. So for this I have said you need to find an unlucky character, and I have gone Riley from The Master Truth by Kelly Armstrong, because as this starts, Riley has been through a horrific experience where, as she was babysitting, there was a shooter in the house, and she was the only survivor and so is dealing with survivor's guilt. But then she goes to this therapy group with obviously other people who have got their own issues, and she is put in a very similar situation, and to go through that once is very unlucky, but to go through it twice is just, it's unlucky but also completely unimaginable, and I can't get my head around it, because how do you comprehend being held at gunpoint? I don't think you can unless you've experienced it, which Riley has twice. And there is also representation for quite a few mental health issues in this. The main one, aside from the whole survivor's guilt and PTSD, is schizophrenia, and I can't speak on how accurate they both are, but I thought that they were handled really well and in a gentle way. Nobody was made out to be a villain in any way, especially Max, who is the schizophrenic character. He was not made out to be like crazy or bad or anything. It was just, this is Max, he has schizophrenia. Oh well. So yes, if you are looking for a thriller that deals with mental health issues, I would highly recommend this one, because it is really gripping and the characters are just really likeable as well. And then finally we have Viserion, who was named for Daenerys' brother Viserys. And I haven't really gone for a connection with him for this prompt. I have gone with the fact that in season 6 or 7, I can't remember which, Viserion gets taken over by the White Walkers. He is shot down and becomes essentially an ice dragon and is fighting against Daenerys and all the good guys now. So for this I have said you have to find a book with an icy setting or a cold character. And I have gone with Rune Marks by Joanne M. Harris, because a specific scene of this is basically set in like an ice chamber, and Maddie, the main character, has to fulfill a prophecy, and in doing so she basically has to thaw out some giant ice cubes. And I'm trying to be vague with that on purpose. It would make sense if you have read it. But then also, after she has thawed out these giant ice cubes and fulfilled that part of the prophecy, there are some characters who are very cold towards Loki. Because this book is a fantasy set 500 years after Ragnarok that deals with the start of the new age after the gods have all been killed at Ragnarok, and it follows the main character Maddie as she is kind of instrumental in that. She ends up teaming up with Loki and Odin and has to try and fix things, and at the time of filming this I am actually in the middle of this, so I can't tell you like how it ends or why they've teamed up because I don't know why, I haven't read that far. But yes, a lot of the characters in this are extremely cold towards Loki, but they are also really cold towards Maddie, because Maddie has what is known as a ruin mark, which is essentially just a rune on her body that gives her the power of glam and being able to essentially do magic. She can cast runes and create mind bolts, which are like a sword made out of like magic, I guess. It makes sense when you read it, it's hard to explain. But everyone in the village is cold towards her because that is not allowed. After Ragnarok, when all the gods were wiped out, the new order was put into place, and it's basically saying no magic, you can't dream, you can't do anything, you have to just be boring basically. And because she has this mark on her, nobody likes her because they know what that means. Bad things will happen and she is just an outcast. But so far I'm really enjoying this. It is a very nice fantasy book. It's a little hard to kind of get into, I found, but yeah, if you like fantasy and you like mythology, I would recommend picking this one up because I find that it is a nice blend of the two. So there we have it. That was my very first original tag video. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed creating it, and I'm kind of amazed that I have created it. So please, 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 if you have watched this and you enjoyed it, have a go, let me know, tag other people, please spread it around. I personally am not going to be tagging anyone because I don't really know who likes Game of Thrones. I know Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction has read the books, but she doesn't like doing tag videos. But if you feel like doing a tag, Ashley, then this one maybe? But yes, if you have any comments, please let me know. If you would like to do this again, please let me know, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye!